Hello again. I'm just gonna nip to Tesco's to get some beer and a couple of other bits, but the beer is the most important thing, of course. So the one thing I just want to talk about between now and then is it's another kind of taxi issue, which is to do with the idea of taxi drivers knowing where everything is in the town. So the assumption is that your taxi driver, you should know where it is. So somebody gets in the car and they'll say to you where they live and assume that you know where it is, and off we go. Now, for the best part, most taxi drivers, and I'm myself included in that, and depending on experience, they do know where the vast majority of places are in the town, so streets and what have you. However, there's always the chance that the driver might not know, because if you think about it, if you take into account Grimsby, Cleethorpes, Immingham, Waltham, New Waltham, Humberston, all the different places, there's thousands of streets and roads and groves and crescents and all sorts of places and the idea that a taxi driver can literally hold every single one of those places like in his brain is frankly ridiculous. And the truth is that that goes the same for a taxi driver anywhere, even the ones in London who do the knowledge test in London, which can take upwards of about 4 years for some people to get through. It's not possible. It's impossible to be able to remember every single place in the area within which you're working. So for us, North East Lincolnshire, imagine North East Lincolnshire is fairly big. It's just impossible. However, some people actually get quite angry with you when you don't know where they live. And I've had people say to me, they've told me where they're going, and I say, "Oh, I'm not familiar with that," or it seems to have left my memory for, can you remind me where it's off? And they get really angry about that, and they say, "Well, you're a taxi driver, you should know." And I wonder what's going on in their minds when they get that angry about it. Because, as I've said, it's impossible to know, and it's easy to forget a place, especially if it's been a long time. So, for example, only last week, somebody got in and they wanted me to take them to Freya Croft, which is on Scather Top. Now, I knew it was on Scather Top, but I couldn't remember exactly where it was. So I just said, "Oh, I know it's on Scather Top, but where?" And they said that they was quite happily. They just said, "Oh, it's it's off Asgard Way." So, oh, great, brilliant. And then I knew where it was. But some people have done that, and they've got really angry with me. And obviously, then it makes then for an unpleasant journey from there on in. It's sort of like they've now made a decision about you, about your what you know, what you don't know, your intellect. It's the whole dynamic of the relationship between you and the passenger at that point is now not as good as what it was before they got in. So anyway, what I would suggest to people, you get into a taxi, if the taxi driver says, "Oh, I'm not familiar with that," just say where it's off. Just say, "Oh yeah, it's off so and so." Go, "Oh yeah." Nine times out of 10, I bet the taxi driver go, "Oh yeah, that's it, I remember now." Because this job, certainly what I find is it's like a visualization process that goes on. As soon as somebody gets in, they say, take me to Clee Crescent, which is coming up. and immediately I can visualize that. I have pictures of it in my mind, and I can visualize it. And then, of course, the most important thing is that once you can visualize it and you know exactly where it is, the most important thing is getting there in the cheapest way, which is what our job is supposed to do, which I mentioned in a previous video, that we have to go the cheapest route. That to me is the more important thing, not necessarily knowing exactly every single street, road, crescent, grove, whatever in the whole town. It's not possible to know. So, like I said, I would just suggest to people to just think about that and think that it isn't possible to know all those things. And if a driver doesn't know where something is, just help him out with it. It's no big deal. There is one thing that kind of comes off from that, though, is when, and it goes back to the video I made about racism, is that you invariably when somebody will say to you, "Oh, I got in a taxi the other day and I got in one of them foreign drivers," and you can tell, you know which way this conversation's going to go now. And it's like, "Oh, he didn't know where Davenport Drive that we've just gone past. Doesn't know where Davenport Drive is." Well, he wouldn't know where Davenport Drive is. He's only been taxiing for like 6 months, and he's not from round here. He's moved here from another town just recently. So you say that to them, and then they get more angry again, and then they say, well, they shouldn't have a taxi. Well, how can they get a taxi license if they don't know the town? Now, therein lies the problem. The problem is with the knowledge test that the council make us take. And the problem with the knowledge test in North East Lincolnshire is it is, in my opinion, inadequate and not fit for purpose. Because what that knowledge test should be, it should be a proper test of a person's understanding of the town, the layout of the town. The knowledge test merely just asks you to say where 40 places are, and you have to get, I think, 37 of them right. You just have to say, where's so-and-so? Oh, it's off that. And if you get 37 of them right, you're in. It doesn't account for testing whether you know how to get there, which I think it should. So I think the knowledge test should be more rigorous than it is, and that would mean that more people get through the test who actually know the town, and therefore, even though they're inexperienced, they've still got a reasonably good grasp. They can understand the layout of the town, and that needs to be demonstrated, and it needs to be thoroughly tested in the knowledge test. Without that, you are going to have the kind of problems that some people meet. I do find it a bit annoying that when people say, "Oh, these foreign drivers," they, like they do, all blustery and red-faced they get. But the truth of the matter is when I started, even though I was born here and I knew the town, when I started, it still took me a while to sort of really get into the ins and outs and the nitty-gritty of knowing the best and the cheapest way to go. Prior to being a taxi driver, I was just a driver, and I just used to drive in a way that seemed logical to me. But you learn a lot more about the town, and that's the quickest way to get there, and how cheaply you can do it with experience, and obviously learning from other taxi drivers as well. So I was no better than the foreign drivers when I first started taxi driving. So, people need to stop with all this just using the F word to cover every situation when they get in a taxi, because it's not the fact that they're foreign, it's the fact that they're inexperienced and not from round here, and they just need a bit of time to get that experience, and then they'll be fine. And there's probably plenty of as in inverted brackets foreign drivers on the rank are probably considerably better than I am at it. But that's another matter. Anyway, I hope that's covered that subject well enough. And if you like this kind of content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Anything you can do to help me would be much appreciated. And I'll speak to you again soon. Cheers.